Hello. So, today we are going to talk about five things that um, I just picked out five things that people commonly think or sketch about um, God, the God of the Bible, or the Christian God, I guess I'd say, um, or God's icks, as the kids would say. Trying to be modern here and let everybody know that I'm with it. Um, so yeah, let's just get right into it because this is going to be really heavy on the to cover. So the first thing that I put down is this thing about war and killing and basically what appears to seem like um, God is making you do his dirty work. When a lot of these are in the Old Testament, if not all of them. And the Old Testament is like, again, this is another one of those things that I just feel like it's really blown out of proportion. And are some things tough? I guess. No, yes, they are. They are. But when you take away the differences in time period, the context, um, what humans have done historically, um, by the time you like take all that stuff into consideration, like a lot of these criticisms just do not have the teeth that people think that they do. And even when you get down to it, basically what people don't like is God doing God things. Which is really funny because when we see these traits in other human beings, it seems like humans are a lot have an easier time getting away with a lot of this stuff than God, which is weird because God is God. So when God says do this thing and you say why, and He says because, there's no one else on around whatever preposition that you want to use. There's no one else that really has the uh, authority to say that, to get away with doing that. Um, And I understand that maybe you grew up with your weird authoritative parents, and because I said so, it just like goes all through you. But God at any point could just make you stop breathing. He's not going to do that, but I'm just saying, like, well, I guess technically he does that to everyone at some point in their life when it's time. But since he is literally in control of everything, it's like he has got the ultimate privilege to just say, because. And it creeps us out, I guess, when he does that because it's like, oh my gosh, he's a tyrant, but like he clearly isn't. I mean, he could say like, hey, winter's not coming this year because y'all are just doing too much out here. No winter. And he could do a bunch of stuff that he doesn't do, and we take that all for granted. In fact, a lot of times he is willing to like explain himself and stuff, and so I just think everybody should really just take it down a notch. First of all, you need to understand who you're dealing with, which is the power of all things. And the fact that you can ask him why. I mean, there's some dudes out here that if you ask them why, they'll just like go all. There's some dads out here, you know what I'm talking about. And part of that, aside from it being, is it toxic a little bit, maybe, but mostly, hold on, I totally locked my kid out. Hey, I'm busy. Can I help you? I left my kids out while they were at lunch because I needed to make this video and I just didn't want to communicate that. Anyways, So I bet I'm gonna get another three door knocks because they're just gonna be like, "What? Mom is denying us access to her room? Is she dying in there? Someone call the cops." Anyways, um, so yeah, I think everything. Yes, I'm gonna go through this and try to dismantle it as much as I can. But I think just starting with the understanding that God doesn't have to go through you for anything. He really, really, really doesn't. And he could, I feel like people would like it better if he was more impatient and um, just constantly use the God card. I think people would, the wrong type of people would really respond to that and like that. But he's just not that way. He's the way that he is. And so, yeah, just keep in mind that God doesn't have to go through you for anything. He is the ultimate authority. And of this attitude that people don't seem to like, He is the only one that has complete and total right to use it without it ever being made to seem tyrannical. It's like, who made you the boss? It's like He made all bosses. He's the maker of bosses, and He can do this. So, um, but anyway, be that as it may. So it just came to mind like as I was talking about Abraham and Isaac. Most of the examples I used were like the very blatant things about war and this and that. So just really quickly, Isaac being sacrificed. God tells Abraham to sacrifice your son on the altar or whatever, and then they get up there and God stops him. Okay, so aside from the fact that Isaac was a grown ass man when this happened, um, the other thing is that child sacrifice was a thing already. So it's really not so much that it was this outlandish thing to ask. Like, you really just need to understand, really try hard to understand how many thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years of human history there's been, and that the foundation and the extremely high pedestal tower of human I don't want to use the word evolution, but human progress that we get to stand on top of and look down upon everything that we survey. Just really bring it down and try to understand that this is a time when people were sacrificing their children to gods. Pretty much everyone was doing that. And also, side note, they weren't doing it because they weren't giving these gods their favorite kid. Okay. So um so God was testing him, yes, in a way, but also um if he would have gone through with it, he would have been just like every other god that there was. But he didn't have him go through that. And then, in fact, we see a foreshadowing later of God doing that himself and sacrificing his son for the sake of humanity, which to me is the ultimate good faith gesture that a God. I mean, that's God trying to show you that I'm not, you don't have to be afraid of me. I am trying to, I'm not trying to harm you. I'm not trying to overpower you. I'm not trying to, because I think he understands that our fears are not unfounded. He understands that he's got us doing this thing and it's strange. He has chosen to make himself uh, less than detectable besides a couple of methods. And he sympathizes with that, and he is constantly trying to use even our own methods of, even when he makes this covenant with Abraham, and he does this human custom of, sacrificing a bull and passing through the, I don't even remember how it went, but passing through the pieces and swearing by himself because there was nothing higher to swear by. I mean, that's gangster, right? So, why does he do that? He does that for our benefit, so that we can feel comfortable, because he understands that there is a scary aspect of it, but he is meeting us halfway with this stuff. So, speaking of which, after he's made this covenant, after he's given Abraham the son, through the son, he's given them the descendants. The descendants are now becoming a nation. Okay. So I use the example of Numbers 31, which is one of those passages that people like to bring up of, where God says, hey, go in and kill every man, woman, and child, blah, blah, blah. It's like people's favorite thing to do. First of all, uh, it's whether it's more humane than just having some random country drop a drone strike on some random place is debatable. So let's not, while you all sleep in your beds and you don't even know what happened, and they just tell you it was for freedom, and you go, okay. So relax, first of all. But let's see. So let's see. Numbers 31. Why did I pick this? Okay. I think with this particular one, I wanted to show like this wasn't just kill everybody and then feel good about it. Uh, you know, why does God have us fight wars? First of all, back in this day, it wouldn't have been that strange for men to fight. It's just there's no governments, there's no sovereignty, there's no uh, country lines. There's just the strongest conquering. Okay, like I don't know I mean. This was what 4000 BC or something like that. I don't whatever. So you've got this group of people who were all slaves, who had nothing to their name. They leave Egypt with a bunch of spoils that that God was able to have them get. Now they're out in the wilderness. They have no country, they have no land. So what are they supposed to do? Well, why should they have to go in and take somebody else's land that those people went in and they just were indigenous to that land? Okay. So part of the reason why they were in enslaved for 400 years, I don't even know if it was why, but God has this way of killing two birds with one stone. So when it became time for them to be done with their slavery, it was just so happened to be the time that the Canaanites and the other ites that were in that land that they were going to possess, which by the way he promised to Abraham like centuries before. So this was the land they were supposed to inhabit anyways. He had already called it. He had already called dibs on it. It was about time. Their sin had reached full measure, which you'll see a lot. What does that mean? I mean, if you really just need to really understand what that means, like you're being super obnoxious, but like let God be God. Their sin reached full measure after 400 years. Just take his word on it, guys. So at the time that they came out, the sin had reached full measure and it was time for them to be wiped out. Great. So now you can go wipe these people out. This will also help you to become a people group who can actually be out here defending yourselves. And Also, I think there is some, as long as there's evil on the planet, as long as there's wickedness in the world, I know we're all in a kumbaya state right now, and we're trying to get peace on the earth, which is something you can do when you just sit at home and you just hang out with your friends, and you can just be like, why can't there just be peace on earth? But like, it's not possible, not really. The peace that will inevitably come to this earth is going to be a coercion and probably some kind of like sleep hypnosis type thing that everyone's going to agree to. Um, but at this point, uh, humanity was young, it was rebellious, it was lively, it was all about conquest, and some weird stuff had happened prior involving super wicked stuff. So there was intense pockets of wickedness, just like now, but it's like covert because it just doesn't want to really be found out. Plus, everything's connected now. It's not like an isolated incident can happen in some part of the world and then it has to be handed down through oral history for anyone to even know what happened. That's not the thing anymore. There's so many things that are different. It is just impossible to try and hold the things of today, hold these events to today's standard. But anyways, so yeah, you have to learn if you're going to be a people group, you're going to have to learn to be able to make war, defend yourself in some kind of way. If you are you do you live in the mountains where you're just surrounded by mountains, and it's really hard for anybody to come in and attack you anyway? Great, you have a natural defense. Are you just absolutely crazy and no one wants to mess with you? Great. There's all these different ways that these different civilizations defended each other. This is a people group literally being born in a day, basically. And yeah, they are going to have to fight, or they're going to be killed by someone. They're going to be killed out there in the wilderness. They have nothing. So, and I think that when you're fighting a war like that face to face and you're just having to do it and the men are having to gather together and whatever, you're not trying to do that all the time. You're not going to be willy-nilly about that. It's not something that you're going to just flippantly do. But here's what they did. So they fought against Midian as the Lord commanded Moses and killed every man. Okay. Then it says the Israelites captured the Midianite women and children, and took all the Midianite herds, flocks, and goods as plunder. They burned all the towns where the Midianites had settled, as well as all their camps. They took all the plunder and the spoils, including people and animals, and brought the captive spoils and plunder to Moses and Eleazar the priest and the Israelite assembly at the camp. And then, um, and then it says Moses was angry with the officers of the army who returned from the battle. He says, "Have you allowed all the women to live?" He asked them. They were the ones who followed Balaam's advice, long story, Old Testament story, and enticed the Israelites to be unfaithful to the Lord in the Peor incident so that a plague struck the Lord's people. So there's this part where uh, all you need to know is like intermarrying is one of the main ways that people groups waged war with other groups. So the power of wives and women back in the day was known. I won't say like it's different now, it's unknown now. It's changed. The information has gone away. But if you wanted to weaken a group that was against you, you you know, softly waged war by intermarrying with them. And it caused a big hullabaloo and some people died. Um, and then it says, anyone, it said, okay, let me read this part. So then it says, now kill all the boys and kill every woman who has slept with a man, but save for yourself every girl who has never slept with a man. My impression of that, just just a general observation and what it probably is, if I were to guess, why you kept virgins, not because they were sinless, but because uh, there's time to sort of, when you have a virgin from any tribe other than yours, there's still time for them to not be part of the enemy's whatever. So they can be preserved. I don't know if I explained that properly, but it's like anyone who had a wife that whose husband died is probably mad and is probably going to seek revenge and kill you in your sleep. But a virgin who really just kind of probably doesn't care either way, she could probably, she's sort of a blank slate. You know what I'm saying? Um, that's sort of my educated guess. Okay, and then it says, um, this is, oh, okay, wait, I went too far. And then it says, anyone who has killed someone or touched someone who was killed must stay outside the camp 7 days. On the third and seventh days, you must purify yourselves and your captives. Purify every garment as well as everything made of leather, goat hair, or wood. So this wasn't just, let's go do a bloodbath and then let's go drink the blood of our enemies out of their skulls. This is, we did this thing, it's done. We're going to purify ourselves. And it's not treating anything like war is great and the more war you do, the better you are. It's like, this is something that had to be done. And now here is the procedure after that so that nothing is unclean or unholy. So it goes on and on. It talks about the spoils. Um, very transparent, I guess. And then here's another example. Uh, here's where someone did not do what God said. And again, I'm kind of breezing through this just to give you examples, but I'm expecting you to be able to kind of get over yourself and be able to see this for what it is. This is ancient history. Literally, wars happened and people were attacked. They were attacked many times. And for instance, this is about the Amalekites, okay? And there's a lot of context to this. Saul was the first Israelite king, okay? He was handsome, but he was a hot mess. And so this is what happens when Saul is when God calls Saul to go to war with the Amalekites, which is like this group that, I don't know, they're like I don't know, they're like some epic story villain like Star Wars or something, or Lord of the Rings. They just are the villains. They show up so many times and they have to be fought so many times in the Old Testament. So this is so let me start at verse 2. Okay. This is what the Lord Almighty says. I will punish the Amalekites for what they did to Israel when they waylaid them as they came up from Egypt. Okay. So we already have a motive for God wanting to wage war. He's punishing the Amalekites for what they did to Israel when they waylaid him as they came up from Egypt. Now, you could have an issue about that if you want to. Why is God punishing people for what they did? I thought we were supposed to love, blah, blah, blah. Like, if you want to get caught up in the web of this, like self using the law against itself, fine. But you need to just understand that part of your main problem is that God is the end all and be all. That's what you have the main problem with. If God decides that it's time to punish these people and this is the way I'm going to do it, and I'm not going to come down and do it, I'm going to have you do it, you have a problem with that. He's not asking you to do that right now, so just relax. He's not going to probably ever ask anybody to do this again. Okay, but this did happen and someone wrote it down. So let's see what happened. He says, go and attack the Amalekites and totally destroy all that belongs to them. Do not spare them. Put to death men and women, children, infants, cattle, and sheep, camels, and donkeys. Okay. So, again, I don't know. Like, you have to think about it too. If you're in a war and you spare women and children, what have you actually done? You just went in and took away a bunch of people's livelihood. And for what? So then they can slowly starve and become what? Like, and I'm not saying like, oh, kill everybody. It's just like there's strategic things going on, and we live in such a different time. Everything is different. No, this would not make sense now. But yet, we do still go to war, and people do still die, and it's just as random as it's ever been. Um, but a lot of people have already made the case that it's a lot worse now. And World War One and Two, I think, like dwarfed so many of the wars, and no one really bothers to sort of unravel that. But and it probably, maybe, possibly wasn't really over much of anything, since people were funding both sides of it and making uniforms for it and making manufacturing things. Like, this was actually over like some stuff that happened. So, um, anyways, so that's what God told him to do, to destroy everything. So then it says, then Saul attacked the Amalekites all the way from Havilah to Shur, near the eastern border of Egypt. He took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive, which he's not supposed to do. Um, but Saul and the army spared Agag and the best of the sheep and the cattle and the fat calves and the lambs, everything that was good. These they were unwilling to destroy completely, but everything that was despised and weak they totally destroyed. Now, I'm pretty sure the very first time I heard this story, I knew that he was in a lot of trouble. I knew enough about God to know, like, oh, that's terrible. That's bad. And then it says, then the word of the Lord came to Samuel. I regret that I have made Saul king because he has turned away from me and has not carried out my instructions. And then it says, here's what I love about it. This is how clueless this guy is. It says, early in the morning, Samuel got up and went to meet Saul. And Saul reached him. When Samuel reached him, Saul said, the Lord bless you. I have carried out the Lord's instructions. And then Samuel said, what then is this bleating of sheep in my ears? What is this lowing of cattle I hear? Which is just a complete and total comedy sketch. And then Saul answers, oh, yeah, okay. So the soldiers brought them from the Amalekites. They spared the best of the sheep and the cattle to sacrifice to the Lord. But we totally destroyed the rest. You guys, that's such a hot mess, dude. When God tells you to destroy completely, what does he need the best of the sheep for? From something else, some other people's gross thing that he wants destroyed completely. Why does he want the best of the sheep and the cattle from that? Like, that you didn't grow, it's not a sacrifice for you anyway. You just took it from someone else. Like, that's such a hot mess. And then, but then he argues, because then Samuel's like, why did you not obey the Lord? Why did you pounce on the plunder and do evil in the eyes of the Lord? And Saul says, but I did obey the Lord. I went on the mission the Lord assigned me. I completely destroyed the Amalekites. The soldiers took the sheep and cattle from the plunder, the best of what was devoted to God, in order to sacrifice them to the Lord. And he's like, this is where the scripture comes there. It says, it's not burnt offerings I require, but sacrifice. And rebellion is like witchcraft, and arrogance like the evil of idolatry. So that's where that comes from, that particular scripture. But just in that example, we see that war is not a flippant thing to God either. And if something is bad enough for him to send you in and destroy it, then destroy it. It's treated very strictly. It's like destroy it all. Don't look to the right or the left. Wash when you get back. Consecrate, whatever. And so while we may not understand it fully or maybe even at all, to sort of try to be like, oh, I just can't even get through it. I just don't. You need to try and get through it because in it is the very issues of life. Because if you think that we're not in wartime right now, that you're not being used like a battery in the Matrix right now, this is still happening. And this will never not happen. So you need to figure out what side you're on and what's going on, and what you're going to do when the time comes. Because you're not in a enlightened place that I believe that men still need to be able to look their enemies in the eye if they have to kill them, if that has to happen. We don't need you being a sniveling coward up until the time it's going to cause you to kill a lot more people if you find yourself in that situation and be a lot more callous and a lot more gross about it. So, yeah, there's a lot to humanity and a lot to uh, stuff like war and these sort of uncomfortable conflicts that if you avoid, when it does happen, when, not if, you're going to make more of a mess of it. So it's better to be wise and learn from things that have already happened. Even if you think, oh, I'll never need to know this because kumbaya. So yeah, that's 30 minutes just on number one. So huzzah, I've made myself a series. So I guess we'll just talk about that one today. And I kind of rushed through it because I thought I was really going to actually do all five, which is hilarious now. But uh, yeah, that's all I have. Um, Happy Sunday or whatever, and